Hey, I'm Autumn. Let's press rewind to the best of the 90s, one memory at a time. Movies, music, TV, and everything in between. With a little love for 1997, my favorite year I've seen. There's a secret notebook no one knew about, full of memories worth singing out loud. So come along and nostalgia's on me. Welcome to Autumn's take on 90s nostalgia.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Autumn's Take on 90s Nostalgia. I'm Autumn, and honestly, I'm still a little shocked that this is finally happening. I've been talking about doing a podcast like this for a long time, and I finally decided to stop overthinking it and just hit record. So thank you for being here, whether you're listening on your drive to work, relaxing at home, or maybe you're just looking for a little trip back to the 90s. I'm really glad you decided to join me. If you grew up in the 90s, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say all it takes is hearing a theme song, seeing an old commercial, or spotting a toy at an antique store to be transported back to childhood. One minute you're scrolling on your phone, and the next you're remembering Saturday morning cartoons, wandering around Blockbuster trying to pick out just one movie, renting video games for the weekend, or begging your parents to let you stay up just a little later to finish your favorite show. That's what this podcast is all about. Every episode, we're going to revisit something that made growing up in the 90s so much fun. Sometimes it'll be a TV show everyone remembers. Other times it'll be something that makes you say, wait, I completely forgot about that. And today we're kicking things off with a show that I honestly think deserved so much more attention than it got. That show is Eerie, Indiana. How many of you remember this show? I swear, whenever I bring it up, people either think that I'm like an alien or they know exactly what I'm talking about. I've always loved this show. I recently sat down and watched the whole series again while getting ready for this episode. And honestly, I just forgot how clever it was. Watching it as an adult gave me a whole new appreciation for it. If you've never seen it before, don't worry. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why people are still talking about a show that only lasted one season more than 30 years later. So let's go back to 1991. Eerie, Indiana premiered on NBC, and on the surface, it looked like it was just another family TV show. It wasn't. The series follows Marshall Teller, played by Omri Katz, whose family moves from New Jersey to the small town of Eerie, Indiana. Marshall expects small town life to be quiet. Instead, he discovers what might be the strangest town in America. Everything looks completely normal. There are neighborhoods, schools, friendly neighbors, but then strange things start happening, and somehow everyone else acts like it's perfectly normal. Marshall eventually meets Simon Holmes, played by Justin Shenkarow, and together they become like Eerie's unofficial mystery solving team. One thing I absolutely loved about this show is that you never knew what you were going to get. One episode would have you laughing, the next one might actually creep you out. And somehow the writers managed to do both at the same time. Looking back, I think that's one of the reasons Eerie, Indiana has stood the test of time. The writers never talked down to kids. They trusted us to follow the mysteries, notice the clues, and use our imaginations. Even though the show only ran for 19 episodes, people are still discovering it today, and that's pretty amazing. Now, before we talk about one of my favorite episodes, let's take a second to remember what watching TV was actually like back then. There was no Netflix, no Disney Plus, no Hulu. If you missed an episode, well, you missed it. Unless you got lucky enough to catch a rerun months later. That made shows like Eerie, Indiana feel even more special. One episode that always stuck with me was ATM with a Heart of Gold. When I was younger, I mostly thought it was a fun episode about Simon finding an ATM that kept giving him money. But watching it again as an adult completely changed the way I saw it. You start realizing Simon isn't really spending the money because he's greedy. He's lonely. He wants friends. And underneath everything, you begin to realize that life at home isn't exactly easy for him. There's one scene that has stayed with me ever since I rewatched it. Marshall hears laughter coming from upstairs and says something like, "Sounds like your mom and dad are having a party." Simon quietly answers, "My mom is not home." It's such a simple line, but it says so much without having to explain anything. That moment completely changed the episode for me. It's one of those scenes that probably went over my head as a kid, but it hits a lot differently as an adult. That's one of the reasons I think Eerie, Indiana was so special. Underneath all the weirdness, there was real heart. And speaking of Simon Holmes, I honestly couldn't think of a better way to kick off this podcast than by talking to the person who brought him to life. I've got so many questions. What was it like filming a show that was so different from everything else on TV? Did the cast have any idea people would still be talking about it more than 30 years later? And are there any behind the scenes stories we've never heard? Well, today we're going to find out. I'm so excited to welcome today's guest. If you grew up watching Eerie, Indiana, you know him as Simon Holmes, Marshall Teller's best friend and partner in solving all of Eerie's bizarre mysteries. Please welcome Justin Shenkarow.
So I'm excited for you.
Okay, so I wanted to start this 90s podcast and I am obsessed with everything 90s.
I
And
love it.
the first episode is going to be on Eerie, Indiana. So I
Woohoo!
just got through telling everybody about it. And I've had some people asking me some questions to ask you. So I have them here for you to answer.
Fabulous. Let's get into it. First of all, I'm grateful to be your first guest. I'm so
Oh,
excited for you. I love the 90s. And of course, I love Erie, Indiana. So I'm excited to talk about anything and answer all questions.
I'm so sad there was only one season.
Me too. I wanted 10.
Yes, I loved it. So the first question someone wanted me to ask was, how did you audition for Erie, Indiana? How did you come across the audition?
Well, that's a great question. I had an agent at the time, and I had worked on a few different television shows as a guest star, meaning I was like in one episode, and a couple where I was a reoccurring, where I was in a few episodes. And then the audition came for Erie, Indiana, and I loved it. Obviously, playing the part of Simon was just an incredible part, great sides, an amazing script. And I had 12 auditions. So I met with the casting director and then the director and the producers. I met with them several times, and then what's called the money people, who were the financing folks. That was Hearst Entertainment. And then I had to go and speak to NBC and audition for them. And after all of that, I then had to wait a month while they auditioned other people and then went back to NBC, and finally I booked the part. So it was a several month process and 12 auditions.
Oh, wow. So was Simon your first pick, or did you try out for another role?
I did try out for Simon first, and that was the only one that I went in for, and that was the one that I got, which was great.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So, what stands out most about the moment you found out that you got the role of Simon?
Oh, I was over the moon. I was just so excited, and I just, it's super pumped about the script, and all the incredible folks that were part of the show and was just super exuberant. So that was just kind of my feeling in general. The specifics I don't remember because I was 11 and I mean, it was a couple years ago.
A couple years ago. That's awesome. So when you read those early scripts, did you immediately realize this show was gonna be completely different from anything else on TV?
I did realize immediately that the writing was exceptional and it was so unique and so ahead of its time. But then again, as an actor, when you're working on a series, you never know if you're going to do one episode or two episodes or 100 episodes. So you're just grateful to be part of every episode as they come.
What about, so take us back to 1991.
Mhm.
What did a typical day on set look like for you as an 11-year-old?
My call time was, I believe, around 7 or 8 a.m. I don't remember the
Mhm.
exact time, but somewhere around there. And I would go to hair and makeup for, 30 minutes, get the little curls put in, not put in, but tossed up, get a little makeup, go into wardrobe. So I'd put on my outfit and then would go do school. So I did school on set. So I'd probably do maybe an hour of school on set. And then meanwhile, they were setting up the shots. They were setting up with the director of photography and the director. They would be setting up the shots, and then they would call us in to block the shot. So we would kind of go in and do a rehearsal and then I would go back to school while they would go light the shot, which takes quite a while. A lot of folks don't know it takes an enormous amount of time to set the shot up and light it properly and put the camera and all the lights in the right places. So that would probably be about an hour. And so I would be in school at that point, and then I would go and we would shoot. We would shoot the scene, and we would shoot like a master, which is a wide shot, which encompasses everybody on in that shot. It's kind of like the camera's a little further back and you see everything. And then we would do over the shoulder shots, which is where the camera is over one character, kind of you catch a little bit of their shoulder, and then it's a close up on the another actor, and then we go in for close ups. So we would shoot for probably a couple hours, and then I would go back to school and do schooling while they were setting up the next scene, and we would do it all over again. And I would work 9 hours as a kid. I would work, which would include 3 hours of school time, and then
Okay.
be wrapped and go back home and do it again, all again the next day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, my one of my friends wanted me to ask you if anything eerie ever happened on the set of Eerie, Indiana.
hmm Oof. Well, I mean, that's a great question. We had everything felt like eerie on Eerie,
Hmm.
Indiana. It was all eerie. We had, to me, the most eerie aspect was actually the fog. So we would have these shots where they would pump in this fog machine and it would cover the entire set with fog. And then Marshall and I would crawl through it on our hands and knees, and it was wild because it was strange and weird, but it was cool. And then going up to our evidence locker, which was, we'd go up these stairs, and that's where we put all of our clues. That was kind of eerie and strange itself. So those were probably the most eerie things, and everything on set was a little bit strange, but it was also wonderful. It was just such a family experience of amazing crew members and amazing cast. So it just felt like home every day.
Well, I think the one episode that stands out most to me and everybody when you first ask them about it is the forever wear.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
what was it like working on that set?
That was the pilot episode. So that was the first episode we did. And in fact, we didn't know whether the series was going to get picked up to do more episodes until after we shot that pilot. And what they did was they showed the pilot to the network, and the network, I think, does a lot of focus testing. And so people really enjoyed it. So that's how the series was picked up. And that episode was the one that I had the lines for my actual audition process. So I was kind of preparing for that pilot episode throughout the course of all of those 12 auditions. But that was a fantastic, super fun episode to shoot. We shot it at the Warner Brothers Ranch, which actually now is it's still there, but it's very different than it was obviously in 91. So we shot at it's all exteriors. So they have this Warner Brothers has called what's called the ranch, and it's in Burbank, and it's kind of streets that feel very Midwestern with homes that feel very Midwestern. And we shot a lot of that episode there with, the woman who was the Tupperware lady who was exceptional for her home and then Marshall's home. And a lot of exterior shots in that, which we all shot at the ranch there. And I remember the craft service, which is the table they set up for the actors and the crew members to kind of have a little bit of food and so forth while you're shooting because you're shooting long days. So they always want you to be well fed. And we had the best craft service person on the pilot. We would have like smoothies and all sorts of yummy food that the craft service person would make. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. And I remember the twins, the young twins, they were from, I think, Iowa. I think they were from Iowa. I'm not sure if they acted before, they'd maybe done a little bit of acting, but they were great. And it was really fun working with them. And then, of course, the adult twins who went, I think they were in Terminator too. They went on to become pretty famous. They were great. But yeah, the pilot was amazing. It was the first time where I was able to meet the other actors cast in the show and, meet Omri who played Marshall and his whole family, real family and then TV family. And we just got along so well immediately. We just had such a great kind of kinship and there's just felt like this just wonderful relationships that we all built and it came from the top down. I mean, the creators of the show, Carl and Jose Rivera, were amazing. They were just so passionate about the series. Joe Dante, who directed the pilot, was a legendary director who came from the Burbs and Gremlins and incredibly famous film director at the time, which was kind of rare for a film director to direct a pilot of a TV show. Now it happens all the time, but at that time that was very rare, and he was amazing. So yeah, it was such a fun show. I think maybe we shot for 10 days, the pilot, maybe something
Oh,
kind of
wow.
feels, yeah, I mean, the episodes we shot typically were 6 to 7 days per episode, but I think the pilot we shot a few more days because they really want to get that right because the pilot is what they then show the network executives who then do the focus testing, and that's whether they determine whether they're going to actually pick up the series. But yeah, it was amazing, wonderful, fond memories of the Foreverwhere episode. It was so great.
Well, speaking of props and things like that, is there anything that you kept? Any wardrobe, any props?
I get that question a lot. I so wish I'd kept props or wardrobe from the series. Wardrobe probably not. My wardrobe wasn't the best. But props, we had amazing props. Although we did get an Erie, Indiana jacket, which was very cool. I think we got actually two of them. A really fun kind of black khaki jacket, which says Erie, Indiana on it, and then a little bit more like suede kind of higher end jacket, I believe we have. So I have them somewhere and I'm very grateful I still have them. Of course, I wish I had saved some of the props, but unfortunately I don't.
Well, that's neat.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so what was your favorite episode to film? And if you're talking to somebody that's going to watch it the first time, is that the episode you would recommend?
Oh, good question. I recommend all episodes because I'm a huge Eerie fan. However, my favorite episode was ATM Heart of Gold
Mine
because,
too.
oh, awesome. Woohoo! I love it. Yeah, that episode was so fun to shoot. And I had such a really great character range in that episode because obviously Simon was, my character was a bit of a latchkey child and his parents were we didn't really get into it. We would have explored it more in further seasons, but it was very clear that they were, they kind of had an abusive relationship, and Simon was a little bit outside and kind of had to fend for his own. And so, of course, he looked up to Marshall and Marshall's family, and they really took him in, which was great. And Marshall was his best friend. But, he just never kind of had the that great family. He wasn't well taken care of and didn't have money or anything like that. So in that episode, obviously, the ATM machine becomes his friend and gives him all this money. And with that money, he goes to the world of stuff and he buys his great shoes and he jumps up and the shoes, take him in the air, and he's got all these friends now who obviously are just fake friends because they're there because he has money. And in that episode, I got to ride in a limousine for the first time, and that was a lot of fun. But I just love the episode because it really took Simon on this great journey where he had aspired to be what he thought was a cool kid and, part of the cool, fun group. But realistically, what he realized at the end of the episode was, no, these people weren't really there for him to be their friend. They just wanted him for his money. And they all went away when he lost the money. And his true friend was Marshall. So it was a very sweet, loving episode, but a lot of just creative fun in the making of it.
I noticed in that episode when they were in his room sitting on the bed that Marshall heard some laughter upstairs and said, "Sounds like your mom and dad are having a party." And you said, "My mom's not home."
Yeah, exactly.
So some of the things that you hear in that show, they kind of go over your head when you're a kid,
Right.
but when you rewatch it, you're actually paying attention. So did they ever explain why his parents were so, distant?
They didn't get into it. I don't think we had time to explore. We only did 19 episodes. We didn't, that would have been probably a season 2 or even a season 3 thing. In terms of talking to the writers when I was a kid and we were working on the show, they talked about that, his parents were not the best parents, and they were kind of off on their own doing their own thing. We never really went into a tremendous amount of detail, but I mean, I envisioned obviously probably my dad was not the best dad, and he was, cheating on my mom and doing things that were really wrong and not taking care of me as a child. So I had to really kind of figure out my own way. And fortunately, Marshall and his family moved to Erie and they took me under their wing, and I became kind of a surrogate child in their family. And that happens a lot in life. You have that friend who just kind of comes into the family and almost becomes like a brother. And I felt, Simon was very much craving that kind of attention and love, and he was able to get that with Marshall and his family.
Exactly. And okay, so we have to know, what did you think about the Lost episode?
Oh, I loved it. That was so fun because we all have that, right? Where,
Yeah.
you lose that sock and you're like, where did that, where's my other sock? Where's the other pair? Where did it go? And you can't ever find it. It's not in the dryer. You look in the dryer and it's not there. And you look in your bedroom and you look everywhere and you don't know where it went. So, it went to, we're talking the lost hour, right?
Well, we're talking about the Lost episode where
Oh,
they didn't show it until he
oh,
ran the reruns.
Oh, yes. Okay, we're talking
Yes.
about that. All right, well, I'll finish the thought on this.
Okay.
One of my favorite episodes, I mean, I love them all, but one of my favorite is the place where everything goes.
Uh-huh.
And I forget the name of that world, but it's resonated with me so well because I always forget things and I never know where like that extra pair of sock went. And of course, it went to that lost world, and we went on that set, and it was amazing because everything was there. And it felt so real. But the lost episode, I'm going to give you a tidbit that nobody knows, Autumn. And the reason, and I didn't even know it until about 2 weeks ago. I was in New York and I was meeting with one of the creators of the show because one of my passions is bringing Erie, Indiana back. And I've
I
been
was going to
working,
ask you that.
yes, and I've been working on that for over 15 years. I've been working on it for a long time. And I always say, things don't happen overnight. You just got to keep fighting for your dreams. You got to keep pushing.
Hmm.
And I have been working hard for many years to try to bring the show back because I love the show more than anything. And I feel like it has such an incredible opportunity with the existing fan base and a new fan base. And it inspired so many shows like Stranger Things and so many other shows. And Eerie, was just an amazing, brilliant series. And I feel like it's so ripe for being brought back. Anyway, I tell you all that because I met with one of the creators of the show in New York, and who's a wonderful, brilliant, brilliant writer. And we talked about that lost episode. And I said, why didn't that episode air on NBC originally? And he said, well, the incoming president of NBC did not think that it was appropriate for kids to watch that episode. He did not feel that it was too much for kids to see that episode, and it would be go over their heads, and it was too much to give to them. And of course, he and the rest of the production of Eerie fought against that, said, no, this is why we wrote the show. This is a very bright, intelligent show that we're not talking down to children. We're sharing with them, what they're going through and what life is really like. And the network is the network and they decide because they're the money and they're the distributor.
Hmm.
So that episode was shelved. And it wasn't until 2001 when Fox Kids brought the show back and re-aired the episodes that they finally aired that episode. And it was a brilliant episode. I remember filming it, and one of the kid in that episode, Grant Gelt, was a friend of mine at the time who I'd done a lot of auditioning with. He was great, and the dad in that episode was amazing. And obviously it was an abusive dad that character was playing, and it was a
Hmm.
very serious issue. But that's the kind of stuff that kids and families and people deal with in real life. It's not all peaches and roses. It's real. Everybody deals with, when you're behind the curtain, there are serious things that happen in families. And I think that was an amazing episode, and it was very brave to tell that, but the network didn't want to show it. And by the way, nobody knows this, Autumn. You're the first person to know it. And so
I
now
feel honored.
your audience will know that. That's the real reason.
Well, so we're going to pivot for a minute.
All right.
um, so almost immediately after Eerie wrapped up, you landed the role of Matthew Brock. So did you feel a sense of whiplash transitioning from like a sci-fi kids comedy to a high profile, primetime network drama?
I didn't. I loved it. David Kelly, who is the creator of Picket Fences, who's gone on to become a very prolific writer, creator, maybe the most prolific of our time, loved Erie, Indiana. He loved Erie, Indiana, and I think really enjoyed my character as well. So he requested that I come in and audition for Picket Fences. So I went in and I read for him and a few of the other producers. It was great. We shot that at 20th Century Fox in Century City, and then I went to CBS. So I'd gone from Erie, Indiana, which was 12 auditions, to Picket Fences, which was two. Which was much better. I much prefer two versus 12. But it was, again, a wonderful set, a wonderful family, incredible actors, an incredible crew. Very blessed to have worked on that series as well. Absolutely loved it. And we did that for 4.5 years.
I actually just got through watching the Green Bay Chopper before I got on here with you.
That's great.
So I watched it whenever I was younger, but I didn't really pay much attention because I was still young, but
Of course.
it's such a good show. I
It is.
really
It's a
loved it.
brilliant show. I agree. The acting, the writing, the direction. It was an incredible show. I love working on it, and it was a ton of fun.
Very musical people on there too.
Yeah, very musical people, great singers. We
Yeah,
had Don Cheadle on the show and Tom Skerritt and Kathy Baker and just, wonderful guest stars. In fact, Ray Walston, who I work with on Erie, Indiana, when I was auditioning for Picket Fences, also here's a special tidbit for you, Autumn, that nobody else knows. Um, and I had to audition for Picket Fences. Ray Walston read the lines with me and kind of prepared me for the audition. He was a brilliant actor, absolutely brilliant. And he played Judge Bone on Picket Fences. So that was very fun to see him again and just very blessed to work with such talented folks.
that's awesome. So, a whole generation of fans also know you as the voice of Harold
Yeah.
from Hey Arnold, and they also know you as Gelman from
Uh-huh.
Recess.
Yes.
How different was the world of voice acting compared to live action acting?
That's a great question. Yeah, there are a bunch of similarities in the sense that they always call it voiceover acting. So therefore, you want to bring all of your personality and behavior as an actor to the voice and when you're creating that character. Of course, the difference is they don't see you. So when you're on camera, you go to hair and makeup and you go to wardrobe and you're on set for 9, 10, 11, 12 hours. And then when you are doing a voiceover, you're typically there for 30 minutes or an hour. So it's a world apart, but I love both of them. Playing Harold was a blast. Playing Gelman was a blast. I did Life with Louie, Lloyd in Space. I was the voice of Charlie Brown. So it was a really fun doing voiceover while also doing, working on these different series.
Well, I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
I think our listeners would probably absolutely lose their minds if they could hear Harold talk.
Sure, of course. Hey, Autumn, it's Harold, Madam Fortress Mommy. Gotta
That's
throw a
so
little
awesome.
Harold Autumn for sure.
And now you have a whole new generation of
Yep.
fans because you are the voice of Rhino
Hmm.
on Spidey and his amazing friends.
Yes.
So we have had a few little special requests from tiny fans. If you
Uh-huh.
could maybe say a few lines for him.
Of course. Autumn, it's Rhino. Guess what? Spidey tried to web me up, but I got all the gold. Ha ha
That is so awesome. I love
ha.
it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, if Eerie and Indiana would have been renewed for another season back then, where do you think Simon Holmes would be?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think we would have really had the opportunity to explore more of his home life, where he came from, his family upbringing, and then been able to kind of dive more into who he was as a person and probably built out a lot more episodes centered around Simon. I think that's kind of where we were going, but we got cut short. We got, our knees cut off before we were able to get to where we wanted to go. But I'm writing the pilot now. Don't say anything to anybody, Autumn, except your audience. Again, a little new tidbit. It's called Eerie 2027, The Return. So I'm working on the pilot now of where Erie, Indiana is, and it's pretty scary. It's very scary.
That's that's amazing.
Yeah, but
I'm
it's a lot of
excited.
fun. It's a lot of fun, and it's very scary. And I really think Erie fans and new fans are going to love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so did you have any idea while filming this show, that you would still have a fan base for this show 30 years later?
Of course not. No way. I mean, that'd be like saying, did you know that we were going to have flip phones and then iPhones and the internet? I mean, it'd be like, no, are you kidding? No way. And social media. This is 1991, Autumn. This was before any of that existed, or AI, I mean, I had no clue at all that, first of all, Eerie would get a new life in 2001 from Fox, and then the social media would come with kind of Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and there'd be this whole world of wonderful fans who loved Eerie, who grew up watching it, or saw it in 91, or saw it in 2001, or now share it with their children who love it. And it's just such a blessing to be able to connect with fans and hear their favorite episodes and their favorite scenes. I love it. It's so cool.
Well, when fans recognize you out in the world today, do they bring up Erie, Indiana? And what's the most common thing they say to you?
Yes, occasionally they will bring up Eerie, and I mean, I'm not 11 anymore. I know I look it. I wish I should have been. I wish I could find that Tupperware. I'd like to be stuck right back into it right about now. But they bring up Eerie and they talk about how Eerie was their first introduction into horror, and they become big horror fans. Or that Eerie was their favorite show as a kid, and they're just so excited to talk about it, or they want to talk about a favorite episode that they had, Foreverwhere or Heart of Chain or ATM Heart of Gold. And it just was a show they loved and they missed. They wish there was more of it. So it's such a great, exciting thing to talk to fans of Eerie whenever they stop me or we talk or whatever it may be. It's awesome.
Okay, so I had another question from one of your fans, and they want to know, do you think that Helga and Arnold should have ended up together?
1000%, of course. Definitely.
I loved
Definitely.
Helga.
Yes, we love Helga. We love Helga and we love Arnold, and they for sure end up together. And Harold ends up with Big Patty.
Yeah.
1000%. I love Big Patty. She's great. And Harold and Big Patty got married, and they open a butcher shop, and they've got a couple baby Harolds and baby Big Patties.
That's awesome. Okay, so here's another unique question.
Okay.
Someone wanted me to ask you if Marshall Teller and Jimmy Brock teamed up to solve a mystery, who would actually be calling the shots?
Ooh, that's a great question. I've never heard that one before. I would say Jimmy Brock would definitely be calling the shots because he's the sheriff and Tom Skerritt is the man. However, Marshall would have some interesting insights in terms of discovering who the criminal or the bad guy was. And he would be able to persuade Jimmy to look in a direction that Jimmy wouldn't have thought of, and that would end up solving the case.
Awesome. I have one more question too for you. Is there anything you would like to directly say to any of your fans who have kept the memory of Erie, Indiana alive?
I love you all. I love Eerie. It is my favorite show that I've ever worked on in my career, and I cannot wait to bring it back. And I encourage all of you to support Eerie, talk about Eerie, share it with your friends and your family. And we're bringing Eerie back, Eerie 2027, the return, because it's better to be weird than dead.
Exactly. Thank you
Right?
so much for taking the time to talk with me tonight.
Absolutely, Autumn. I'm so excited for you for launching your podcast. This was so fun. I'm honored to be your first guest.
And there you have it. After hearing Justin talk about his time on Erie, Indiana, I think I understand even more why this little show has stuck with people for more than 30 years. It wasn't about how many seasons it had, it was about how memorable it was. The stories were different, the characters felt real, and clearly the people who made it had just as much fun creating it as we did watching it. And maybe That's why we're still talking about Eerie, Indiana, all these years later. A huge thank you to Justin Shenkarow for joining me for my very first episode. And thank you to all of you for listening. This has been Autumn's take on 90s nostalgia. I'm Autumn, and until next time, stay weird, stay nostalgic, and I'll meet you back in the 90s.
There's a secret notebook no one knew about, full of memories worth singing out loud. So come along